Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Today we're going to start out on a special note, and I'm going to put the viewer question first. And it's not so much a question as a request. This is an incredibly touching message I got the other day, and I really think it deserves to go first. It's from a BTT viewer, Preston L. Young. So let me read it to you what he wrote. Preston said, "Hi Grace, I was totally going to send in a video for your 2000th episode, but my father was in a tragic boat accident last Wednesday. Sorry. Anyway, he's the reason I have such a love for the X-Men, and he and I watched them all, and would discuss in ridiculous detail the choices made in the movies. Days of Future Past will be here Friday, and he's not here to watch it with me. So I'm asking for a favor." I'm sorry, Preston. Okay. While I realize you've probably already recorded your reviews for Days of Future Past, I was wondering if you'd give a shout-out, dedication to my dad, Freddie Young, in your video or movie math. Thanks for your time. I love the show and I watch it every day. Smiley face, Preston L. Young. P.S. I know my dad was at least a one-time viewer of your show because I sent him your review of the Lucy trailer. LOL. That's great, Preston. I am really humbled by your request and I'm happy to honor it. And I think that the bond that you clearly had with your dad over the X-Men movies is very special. And it's relatable to all of us who have our own bonds with our family members and loved ones over the movies. And I think that the bond you have with your dad does deserve to be recognized. It deserves that shout out. And I'm sure, Preston, that you will be thinking of your dad when you go and see X-Men Days of Future Past this weekend. And I think that we all should. That's what I wanted to bring up today. I think that all of us, I'm going to see it a second time. I'm sure you will too, Preston. And I think that when we go this weekend, we should all take just a moment to think about Freddie Young and to send him some happy thoughts wherever he might be right now. And Preston, I want you to know that you're in our thoughts as well. And we are all of us, everyone here at Beyond the Trailer, is very sorry for the loss of your dad and your friend. All right, so let's all cheer up. As I said, happy thoughts to Preston and his dad, Freddie. And I think that let's move now to a fun story. I tried to pick one that I think it's a tough transition to make. But Preston, as I said, I'm really humbled by your request, and I'm happy to honor it. All right, so Disney on Ice presents Frozen. That's our first story of the day. Disney, of course, as we've been discussing a lot here, is totally lost when it comes to what to do with Frozen. They were totally caught unawares of the success, and they're like, oh crap, how are we going to capitalize on this and keep the fans happy? Frozen fans demand to be fed. So they came up with not only the Once Upon a Time idea, the teaser at the end of that season, and Elsa's going to be on the next season of the show, which, worked. People are very excited about that. And so now they're doing a whole Disney on Ice show focused around Frozen. It's going to feature a few other Disney characters. Usually these are like a montage. They have a whole bunch of characters from a whole bunch of Disney movies. But this one is just mostly Frozen. And they're promising a blizzard, but created by snow machines. I guess Elsa, union rules and all. She can only skate in ice and act. She can't actually create a snowstorm here for everybody. But they're saying, so it's going to really tell the story, and they're working very hard with John Lasseter in the animation department to make sure this is authentic. As authentic, I think, as an ice show can be. And then also the other characters that are going to show up are Mickey and Minnie will introduce the show. That makes sense. The Disney princesses are going to show up, I guess, to welcome Elsa and Anna to their ranks. But then also Toy Story and The Lion King are going to show up, which don't really seem to make a lot of sense to me, unless that's like the box office gloating part of the show, where they sing around, they maybe skate around a giant pile of money, because that's how much they've brought in for Disney. So I think, I don't know. I feel this is a little bit on the lame side. I feel that Frozen is like the biggest, not only the biggest animated film of all time, but one of the biggest performing films of all time, period. I think it deserves a little bit more than this. However, I have to say, though, in the Disney on Ice presents Frozen's defense, I've never been to an ice show. I missed one when I was little. My parents told me to go to a dance instead. This was like a middle school dance, and nobody in my school ever dated, so it was just really a lot of standing around, which was what this dance was. It was actually like with another school, and it was such a bad dance that some kids escaped because you weren't supposed to leave without a chaperone, but it was so horrible they escaped, and then they came back and egged the door. But I also remember that evening, not just for that, but because when my sister came back, who had gone to the ice show with my parents, she went on to tell me that while I had had a horrible evening, she had had a fantastic time watching an amazing ice show that was just so much fun. And I'll never forget that. And so that's what I associate with ice shows, a horrible middle school dance. But anyway, so Frozen, Disney on Ice, I'm curious, for Frozen fans, is this enough? Or do you feel that, Disney is giving you a cheap fix? So that's the first story of the day. The second story of the day is a lot of you wrote to me about this, and this is what David Goyer has really gotten himself into trouble this time. It's not because he wrote something that's not so great, although I have to say, I sometimes defend David Goyer because I think his ideas are good. As I often say, David Goyer is a great idea man, but his execution is where he really drops the ball. However, I can't defend him here, and his ideas on this topic are not great. And I'm talking about She Hulk. This was a huge headline grabber, but I don't think it's going to hurt David Goyer's career. One, because he's so entrenched over at Warner Brothers at this point, and two, because James Gunn had a similar kind of blow up, about Guardians of the Galaxy that I was also upset about, and a lot of people are upset about, but it just went away and nobody really cares anymore, and everyone's excited about Guardians of the Galaxy, myself included. Although, as some of you have been pointing out, Gamora has no lines in the trailer, so maybe this stuff does rear its ugly head somewhere down the line. But anyways, you might recall what James Gunn did was he had a list of like superheroes that you'd like to have sex with, and they talked about being able to, turn lesbian characters straight, etc. It was pretty misogynistic and offensive. But anyway, so what did David Goyer do? Well, if possible, I think he actually topped James Gunn. Well, he was at not a conference, I guess like a talk, basically. And, I think he felt he was in a friendly place. Little did he know it was apparently being recorded and other people would find it. But somebody asked him about She Hulk and what his thoughts were on She Hulk. And David Goyer basically said that he felt his theory about She Hulk was that she was created because the Hulk was like a male power fantasy. And because the Hulk is so strong, She Hulk is basically the only quote-unquote chick he can quote-unquote bleep. I can't say the word. It starts with an F. And it was really pretty vulgar and totally incorrect because as many people have been pointing out, She-Hulk is related to the Hulk. They are cousins. Do you think David Goyer would know? I mean, I guess he wouldn't do his research on a Marvel character because he's not associated with those properties really right now. I mean, he worked on the Blade franchise, but now he's a DC guy. But that's pretty basic She-Hulk comic book knowledge for somebody who makes their living in the comic book business. You think he'd have just a working knowledge of all the characters. You think he would just read comics. And he should be reading, by the way, the new She-Hulk title over at Marvel Now. It's very good. And so was the other Dan Slott She-Hulk title. That was so good, that got him the eventual Spider-Man gig. The She-Hulk's had some very great comics recently that I really enjoy. And it really focuses on her being a lawyer, not a bleep buddy for the Hulk. So I just think so that's my first problem with it. The second problem, though, is speaking to a larger problem with She-Hulk. She-Hulk always, I think, is kind of in a weird place because, sorry, She-Hulk's always in a little bit of a weird place because she's not the female version of the Hulk as she should be, which is something that's always bothered me. She has always kind of been a cheesecake title. And I've always been confused as to why the exact same radiation that turns Bruce Banner into a hulking monster would turn, I can't believe I don't remember her last name. Oh, look at me! Harping on David Goyer. I know it's Jen. I forgot her last name. It's not Jen Banner. I think Jen Walters, maybe? All right, but anyway, we all just call her She-Hulk. But I'm sorry. I know she was a lawyer and I read her comic. They should use her real name more often. It's her own fault for being She-Hulk all the time. She never likes to Hulk out and be her regular self. But anyway, if the radiation turns Bruce Banner into a hulking monster, why does it turn She-Hulk into a giant supermodel babe? I never understood it. And actually, I wrote a comic for Marvel called Marvel Heroes. I know, a very unfortunate title. I blame the marketing department. But I'm thankful that it got really good reviews, and a number of you who have read it have enjoyed it. But anyway, I had this character. I can't believe, I should remember the name, right? But anyway, I had this character. She-Hulk was on my team, and I made it so that she turned into a female version, literally, of the Hulk. Total monster, female monster. And I thought that would be great down the line to deal with body image issues through the comic for young women. But we only got to 4 issues because, again, The title was so bad that people were not kind to it right out of the gate. An interesting lesson, by the way, in how a title can sink a movie. I'm looking at you, Warner Brothers, with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. But anyway, it's not as bad as Marvel Heroes. But anyway, yeah, so my big problem with She-Hulk, my personal problem, is that she doesn't really play into the mythos that well, and it doesn't make any sense. And to some degree, she is a cheesecake character, but not to the degree that David Goyer has come up with. And I just think that just the way he'd said it and described it, I think was pretty offensive, and he should be aware that there are a lot of female fans of comic books and movies and the television shows at this point, and I just don't understand in what room, in what arena or surrounding or setting he thinks that's an appropriate conversation or appropriate way to phrase it. So what do you guys think? Are you equally as offended, or is this like the James Gunn situation where you're like, whatever, are you more offended by what David Goyer said about the Bleep Buddies, or are you more offended of his lack of knowledge about She-Hulk? All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story is kudos to Gareth Edwards. This was a big announcement yesterday, and just shows that while I still stand by this, people are heavily divided. All week in the office here, I've been hearing people come in and say, you know what, Godzilla just wasn't that good. And actually, one woman in the office made a really funny joke about, this is a spoiler, if you haven't seen Godzilla yet, you might want to skip ahead a few moments in the video. But she said it's a good thing Bryan Cranston died because he used up all his acting at that point. I thought that was hilarious. Instead of his life force, he died because he was out of acting. I thought that was great and very true, kind of, you know, of the film. I enjoyed parts of it though, as you might recall from my review. But it's easy to laugh at, and I think that's kind of going to shape the way people remember it. But anyway, it had a huge box office opening weekend, as we've discussed on Movie Math, and that's all it took to land Gareth Edwards his next gig, a very exciting gig. He is going to be the director of the first Star Wars spin-off movie. Fabulous gig, and I argue to some degree, fabulous choice. I'll get to that in a moment. But anyway, this is the one that's coming out, they said in 2016, they've set the release date, December 16th, 2016, kind of taking the Hobbit spot there, which is interesting. You know, this isn't Warner Brothers, this is Disney kind of encroaching on Warner Brothers territory. Warner Brothers loves that date, they use it for Harry Potter films. Actually, Harry Potter's more November, but you know, winter season has been very successful for Warner Brothers, both with The Hobbit and the Harry Potter films. But anyway, Disney's jumping in there, they're putting their Star Wars movie in there. They're making, some people are talking about Star Wars becoming a holiday franchise instead of a summer franchise. We'll see. I think these films are going for prestige, so the winter release date could work for them. Or maybe they think they're Oscar contenders, who knows? But anyway, it's a Star Wars spin-off, and Legendary jumped right in, Thomas Tull, the head of Legendary, and he jumped right into the mix and he said, hey, congratulations to Gareth Edwards, don't forget, I found him, and he's still directing Godzilla 2. And interestingly, Thomas Tull said, we were always going to have him take a break and direct another film in between, Godzilla 1 and Godzilla 2. And then I thought it was a nice thing to say, Thomas Tull said, who knew it would be Star Wars? Congratulations, Gareth. And I thought that was a really nice thing for Thomas Tull to do, even though the press release was largely just covering his own butt and being like, we still have dibs on him for Godzilla 2. So nobody else booked Gareth Edwards. So that's very interesting. And Godzilla 2, by the way, they're working on it, and it's not greenlit yet, and I think it needs the time. Let Gareth go and make Star Wars so they can get Godzilla 2 right. I'm still interested in the franchise, although, as we talked about earlier this week, I'm curious as to whether or not you guys are, and some people are, and some people say they maybe rent it. So that's very scary. That'll scare Warner Brothers more than any kaiju. All right, so the spin-off. I think Gareth Edwards is a good choice because I think visually he's a very strong director, and I think that if Kathleen Kennedy can lock that bleep down, it'll work out really well for the franchise with him as a choice. Because I think we all wanted to see Star Wars go a little darker this time around, especially after the prequels went super light, super family film. Even though it was supposed to be about Anakin Skywalker turning into Darth Vader, somehow they managed to make that happy and light. But anyway, it worked to some degree. Those movies made a lot of money. But I want to see these actual sequels go darker. And Gareth Edwards, I think, is in line with that choice. I think he has a very dark, serious gravitas to his filmmaking. He is a perfect Legendary filmmaker. I don't know how much of a say Legendary had in that. I mean, he was to some degree, I feel, copying Spielberg and Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Spielberg's 70s era filmmaking, and some Jurassic Park as well. So we'll see, if he brings Spielberg to Star Wars. But I do think that Gareth has, he leans towards the more serious. Look at me calling him Gareth. I feel so close to him. No. I feel he's more on he leans to the darker side of today's trend of darker filmmaking. So I like him as a choice for that reason. So if, Lawrence Kasdan, if, Star Wars, I think, is a very well-run machine. They're building a very good, well-oiled machine at this point to churn out all these movies. So I think Gareth Edwards will have a lot of supervision. All right, but some people are saying, will he be directing the Han Solo spin-off? I say no, because Han Solo needs to be a little bit light. I think that Gareth Edwards would actually be a horrible choice, especially the way he handled Aaron Taylor Johnson. He did a really bad job, both with the casting. I don't know how much he was a part of that, but even making Aaron Taylor Johnson pop on screen. Some people are saying that's Aaron Taylor Johnson's fault, but he was a good kick-ass. I mean, I think he's pretty good. I mean, unless Aaron Taylor Johnson is a black hole of charisma, then if I was Joss Whedon, I'd be very scared. I'd be like, he's just going to be a blur for the whole movie, okay? That's how we'll fix it. But anyway, so what would I like to see Gareth Edwards direct? I would love to see him do a Yoda or a Boba Fett. Boba Fett spinoff. I think his sensibility would work quite well with those two characters, and I think they're actually safer bets. Recasting Han Solo, that's going to be so tricky, and I'd actually personally rather see Harrison Ford just make another Han Solo movie. I don't care if a lot of it's him taking a nap, whatever, as Harrison Ford looks. I always like to say about Harrison Ford, he looks like he just woke up from a nap all the time now. But maybe, Carrie Fisher really got into shape for these movies. There was an interesting story about how she lost 40 pounds. Debbie Reynolds said as soon as she got the call, she stopped eating, and I've seen pictures of her, and she, kudos to Carrie Fisher. Maybe this was what she needed. I know she's had a lot of personal problems. So she's done a good job, and maybe this will wake up Harrison Ford. Great to see Mark Hamill again, and I wouldn't just throw these older actors away. Don't underestimate the movie-going audience's interest in seeing them going forward. So what do you guys think? Those are the 3 stories of the day. What do you think? Please write your thoughts down below, not only about that, but I really hope to see some well wishes for Preston and also towards his father, Freddie. I think that would be really nice. And don't forget to think about them when you go and see the movie this weekend. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you can check out some more episodes right now.